You ever wonder how really big, profound ideas get taught? Things like the nature of God, His power. How do you even begin to explain that to a young person? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to basically step into a 7th grade classroom and look at a core chapter on this very subject.
So our guide for this whole explainer is right here. It's the first chapter from a 7th grade Islamic education textbook. We're just going to break down the main ideas, exactly how they're laid out for a young student.
And the chapter kicks off with this really beautiful line. Right from the get-go, it sets a certain tone, doesn't it? This isn't going to be some dry theological lecture. No, it's more like an invitation to just look around at the world with a sense of wonder.
Okay, so where do you even start with a topic this big? Well, the lesson begins by looking outward. It presents the whole universe as this collection of signs, all pointing to a creator. And you can kind of see the teaching strategy here, right? Start with what you can see and touch, the concrete stuff, and then move towards the more abstract ideas about God.
And the very first piece of evidence they look at? The cosmos itself. The textbook makes this point that when you look at the planets, the stars, the galaxies, it's not just chaos up there. They're all moving along in these specific orbits. And that orderliness, that's presented as the first big sign of some kind of guiding power.
But it doesn't just stop out in deep space. The textbook brings the focus right back down to Earth. It lists a bunch of other things that it calls signs for people who understand. Think about it. The cycle of day and night, something we totally take for granted. Or the fact that massive ships can even float and sail. Or how rain brings a dry patch of Earth back to life. And of course, the insane variety of animals all over the planet. Each one of these is presented as a little marvel that's worth thinking about.
So, once it's established the universe as evidence for a creator, the textbook then builds on that. It starts to define the nature of that creator, and this leads us straight to a really core theological principle.
And that central concept is known as Tawhid. The book explains it as the absolute, indivisible oneness of God, or Allah. Now, this is more than just believing in one God. It's about a God who is totally unique, complete, and has absolutely no partners or equals. This is pretty much described as the bedrock of the entire faith.
What's really interesting is how much emphasis is put on this idea of uniqueness. The text says it pretty plainly. Nothing resembles him. The main takeaway for a student is that God is presented as completely different from anything in creation. So any attempt to, picture him or compare him to anything physical, it's just not possible. And that idea of being beyond comparison, it extends to physical laws too. The textbook makes it clear that God isn't limited by things like time or space. His existence is described as something totally outside the dimensions that we humans can even perceive, let alone imagine.
Okay, so starting from that concept of oneness, the chapter then dives into what it describes as God's core attributes. Specifically, we're talking about his limitless power and his all-encompassing knowledge.
So let's start with knowledge, or omniscience. The book teaches that God's knowledge is just absolute, total. It covers everything. We're talking from huge cosmic events down to the smallest thought in your head, whether you say it out loud or keep it secret. Absolutely nothing is hidden.
And right alongside that limitless knowledge is limitless power. The idea here is actually pretty simple, but it's also incredibly profound. Whatever God wills to happen, well, it happens. His will is the cause, and his power is what makes it a reality. Simple as that.
Now, to make a big, abstract idea like limitless power easier for a 7th grader to grasp, the book gives some really concrete examples. And this is great because it shows the sheer scope of it all, from the ultimate things like life and death to the daily rhythm of day and night, and even, human destiny, like raising some people up and bringing others down.
Okay, so after talking about these huge, cosmic ideas of power and knowledge, the lesson does something really smart. It pivots. It shifts from all that vast, abstract stuff to something much more personal and intimate. It starts to focus on the relationship between this all-powerful creator and just individual people.
And the textbook shows this personal connection through what it calls acts of mercy. And just look at how direct and relatable these are. It's saying that this same limitless power is what's used to forgive sins, to answer prayers, to give to the needy, to feed the hungry, and to relieve people's suffering. It's a direct line from the divine to our everyday struggles and our hopes.
And this quote from the chapter really sums it all up, doesn't it? The idea is that God's generosity and care are just so constant, so vast, that you couldn't even count them if you tried. It's like a continuous stream of blessings in your life.
So how does the chapter wrap all of this up? Well, it brings everything right back to where we started. This idea of looking at the world around you and really, truly thinking about what you're seeing.
And that's really the crucial takeaway. According to this textbook, understanding God isn't some passive thing where you just accept a list of beliefs. No, it's an active process. The path to knowing is actually through using your own mind, your intellect, and reflecting on all those signs around you, from the stars in the sky to the fact that you even exist at all.
And that brings us to a final thought, something to reflect on that's directly inspired by this whole lesson. If the universe really is like a book of signs, just waiting for us to read it, then what are the little things? What are the small marvels, the bits of order and beauty in our daily lives that we all just kind of take for granted? You know, what are the signs in our own lives that we tend to overlook?